Well, Mark, I'm going to enjoy this because I'm going to put you on the hot seat today.
I'm ready.
You've grown businesses quite successfully, and you've helped other people grow businesses.
Right.
So Torrentia is trying to help people on the clinical side as well as the business side. And we think that's a pretty unique offering. But what we hear over and over again from lots of different sources, firsthand, secondhand, thirdhand, and the stat I just heard is 23% of the industry is burnout or leaving. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, it breaks my heart. When you think of someone having invested the amount of time and the money and energy to invest in a profession and then leave. It's a horrible stat. Let's just say that. But why do I think that's happening? I think it's happening for a lot of reasons. I think one, there are multiple reasons. I think one is that many clinicians or practitioners have bought into the idea that if I get a great education, that's all I need. That's not true. You need a great education that allows you to have great results. You can actually change a pain. You can change the direction of someone. And I think a lot of people are coming out of education and they don't have that skill. I think that's what Torrentia wants to address. Give you skills that allow you to really help people. The second part of it is that, and I'm very, very passionate about this, they think if I just have education alone, but I don't understand business, that I'll still be successful. They're coming out and they don't know how to mix the clinical and the business. So they get to a point where they're making just barely enough to cover their expenses. They can't meet their loan payments that are coming due. And they're sitting here and go, I can't help people. I'm not making money. I don't see any future. And really they're hopeless. I think that's the issue, is hope. And that's where I think Torrentia really wants to is really passionate about giving hope to people who have tried everything else and now they really want to get help, and we can give them real skills. Number two, we're giving that clinician skills to really be able to be successful. And the third thing is we want to help them be able to make a living. Can you imagine spending $250,000 on an education, making $40,000 a year? You're everything you're doing is just barely making it. And you're sitting here thinking, I'm going to do this for the next 40 years. That is hopelessness. We think I think that's the reason most of these people are leaving, is hope. And that's what we want to give them, hope.
I think a lot of people get into the space and then they get into the marketplace. And to your point, I think they think, okay, I have all the credentialing. I've got all the right initials. People are going to find their way to me. Mm-hmm. And then they get out and they realize maybe the system is broken. Mm-hmm. But there's probably a lot of things outside of it. Maybe you could advocate at the state level and start to change some of those things. But most people aren't going to start there. Mm-hmm. So they have to kind of start in their nucleus of control, the things that they can actually do something about. So what are some of the things that you think people can actually do differently? Mm-hmm. So maybe they're an excellent clinician.
Oh, yeah.
But what are some of the things that maybe set them apart?
Mm-hmm. I think what they have to do then is let's say they're an excellent clinician. Let's use that as a premise. Okay, at that point, if people don't come to you,
why?
Why is that? So what I tell a lot of people in business, and it can be a variety of different business, but in this case, let's talk about physical therapists. Are you building relationships, in your community? Are you having conversations with, the basketball coach of your son or daughter? Are you, and in your church, are you helping people? We're in an age right now of everything. I told my assistant the other day, I make phone calls, and it wasn't a phone call. It was a text. It was an email. And I go, no, I want you to physically talk to a person, actually go to them, build a relationship. I think that is a skill that has been lost. And that is, if you're a great clinician, you need to be out in the community. You don't have to do anything that extraordinary, but talking to people. When people say, what are you doing? He says, well, I'm a physical therapist. You need to know what makes you different, what makes you uniquely different, what makes you special. You don't have to be a salesman, but you just have to be able to share what you can do or not do. And to me, that is the piece that's missing right now, again and again and again, if you're a practitioner. I think so. That's one of the things that I think is successful. The other part of it is, I've talked to owners and said, has a practitioner ever come to you and say, I want more money? And they laugh all the time. I go, do they ever come to you prepared? What do you mean? I go, what if they came to you and said, here's how much money I make per hour for you. By the way, this is what I've done this year to bring more business. This is what I've done to be more efficient. Da, da. And you literally can share with the owner your value. The owner looks and goes, that would be a dream meeting. So the reality is we need to help those people understand what they're doing makes money and doesn't make money, and how can they do that in a way that allows them to be more marketable and more valuable.
So I've heard you say that you had a 5-year freeze on increasing people's salary, their wages.
Yeah.
But you gave them more money.
Oh, sure.
So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. If I built a business, I had to build a business of almost 700 employees. And I probably had, let's say, at least 50% of them were all on incentive pay. The idea of every year I get a raise because it's the end of the year, or by the way, the cost of living was X. So I don't believe it. We were at a moment at that time where the market was not growing. We didn't have capacity to do more just for the heck of it. So I created an incentive package where if you would work hard, if you would be innovative, if you look for efficiencies, I paid you more money. And the reality, it was a win-win for both of us. And what we have after 5 years of giving no standard raises, we went back and calculated what happened by giving people performance. They made much more than they would have if we given them standard cost of living raise every year. And I think if you're that practitioner and you go into that mindset of, I'm an owner now, and someone came to me, would I give them money? Would I give them more? Would I give them raise? No. If you don't have a reason why you would give you a money, you need to consider that. So I think that's something that is a lost effort. And as I shared with these owners, they go, could you help my people recognize what they could do? And I think it's really important.
So I can hear some of the responses. My wife is a clinician.
Mm-hmm.
And it's often like, well, I don't want to sell something. Because when you talk about incentives, then a lot of times they're like, well, you want me to sell another therapy? Do you want me to sell some supplements? What exactly are you asking me to do? So there's often some resistance, especially with clinicians. I just want to take good care of the patients. Mm-hmm. What would you respond?
I have 2 points of view. One point of view is, I understand that. On the other side, that's an excuse. That's the harsh part of me coming out. The reality is that we're all selling. I'm not asking you to sell more supplements, to do this, but I am asking you, why would I give you more money? If you can't answer that as if you're the owner, then why should the owner give you more money? What I am asking you to do is build relationships with people, whether it's you're at your church and you're in a Sunday school class and there's a doctor there, or a dentist there, or a physician and thing. As you get to know them, say, by the way, here's what I do. If ever you would like a second opinion, I do a free. I'll do a free thing to be able to educate people, whatever. Just let me know. Now that really doesn't sound like selling. It's just about building relationships with people and talking to them. But the reality is, we all are marketing ourselves, or we're not.
Absolutely.
And the question is, what can you do? It isn't just education. It's education and the business side. So it could be one of those things. Last thing I'll say is this: you may know the way to do something more efficient. We're wasting money. We're doing this. So your expertise. How can I make this process better, faster, quicker, less expensive? That's a value. That's not selling. But I think it's a combination of all 2 or 3 of those things.
You often talk about 4 things as a CEO that you're looking for.
Absolutely.
So that might line up with this conversation. Sure. What are those things that you are looking for?
Mm-hmm. As a CEO, I've said this many, many times, and I've even tested it with other CEOs to see, am I on the line? If you're going to talk to a CEO, there's 4 things that they're really interested in. 4. One is, how do you make me more money? 2, how do you save me money? 3, how do you reduce my risk or my liability? And 4, how do I set myself apart from my competition? And using those 4 things, if you're that practitioner, it isn't just about making me more money. It's, how do you save me money? how do I reduce the risk? I may not realize that we are we're one client away from having a huge lawsuit, and I don't know about it. Is that value? That's a huge value. Or you may be that last person said, I was at my son's in tennis, and the reality is right now they're seeing a lot of tennis elbow as an example. And we have that shockwave that's not being used very well. Would you mind if I talked to them, brought them in, shared some things? Now you're differentiating yourself from everybody else. All four of those are of value. And only one of them is really selling.
Sure. Well, and I would argue that really selling is about educating.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
If you are, which most clinicians love to do, right?
Mhm.
They love to study, because you have to do a lot of studying
Yeah.
to get in the industry. And so at some level, you're just sharing your value,
Yeah.
helping people understand where you fit in.
Mhm.
You're really not selling. You're helping people solve their problems.
Yeah. I think what you said is really important. I think people think selling is just telling people everything they do.
Right.
And really, what I want to do is I want to get to know you. I want to know where your pain points are. I want to know what problems you're experiencing. I just want to get to know you. And that's it. And at some point you go, the second time you meet, you say, you're kind of limping. What's going on? He goes, I was playing soccer. I'm too old to play soccer anymore, whatever. Well, hey, let me know if there's anything I can do. Or by the way, here's something you might want to think about doing. I think value added, those kinds of things, just normal conversation. I talked to an owner the other day, and his business was he had put all of his money in social media. He was a social media guru, and he wasn't seeing the hit. The
return.
The return.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what about this, and it was about and what is he doing just personally? Who's he meeting? Who's he talking to? And his answer was, well, I used to do that. I go, did it work? Oh, it worked really well. Why'd you stop? I don't know.
Potentially they're too busy. So
Yeah.
sometimes that's the pushback is, you want me to go meet people?
Yeah.
Like, when do I have time to do all that?
And I would say, and I've told him this, I said, you're a one-trick pony. I want to be diversified. I want to have a social media presence. I think that's valuable. Don't get me wrong. But I also want to be able to build relationships with people. I want my people to be encouraged to build relationships in their community. And in this situation, he said, well, I don't do that because when they know how to do it, they leave. That's a whole nother problem. But we need, I think it is about educating. And if that may be the word that we use rather than selling, that you're educating people is important.
Yeah. And going back to the incentive structure, when I listened to what you were saying, you actually are empowering people.
Yes.
Right? Because you've got to feel good when you come into work and you see that you're contributing and you're creating value for the organization.
Yeah.
Why do you think people resist the idea of performance structures?
I think part of it is history. I mean, and I think we're getting away from it, which is good, but their mom and dad got a raise based on this. It was more historic.
Cost of living.
Just we always do it that way. And when people started to realize, my goal was I wanted to pay them more, not less. I actually had 2 employees that made more money than me as the CEO. And people go, well, that's not right. Oh, yes, it's right. I want them to make more money than me. Because the reality is, so creating a system that gives them the incentive to want to get better and to build relationships and to bring more value to those people never left. Why? I took great care of them. And ultimately, they took great care of all of us.
How do you get measurement systems right? How do you get performance? How do you think? Because that's pretty complicated. How do you get, because there's a saying, tell me how you measure me, I'll tell you how I perform. Right? So how do you get people to do the things you want? Really, things that are good for them, good for the patient, good for the business. How do you build an incentive program?
It's hard, and I've made some mistakes. I've had incentives that incentivize the wrong thing. And you go, oh, that didn't work well, and I had to pull it back. So some of it's trial and error. I think the thing that I recognize, most people have no idea how much they are worth per hour. And let me even go beyond it. That's easy. What's really hard is when you break down that hour, how much of your hour is in the A, B, C, D, E, and F. And use an example, F may be worth $1 an hour, and A is worth $100 an hour. You know what I find is they're treating them all equal. Real simple. I do a lot more of A at $100 an hour, and I do a lot less of F, which is $1 an hour. Do you know what I do? I make more money. They have no idea. They think they're all equal. They're not. Sometimes you have to do all 5, and that's okay. But wouldn't it be interesting if you really knew where you're really good and where you're really profitable?